All right, good morning, future third graders. I hope you had a wonderful, wonderful weekend. So today we are going to finish or continue talking about Greek mythology. So for today, our objective is I can explain what a myth is, and I can talk about what a myth explains. So what I want to talk to you about is how do we know if it's a myth? So what is a myth and what it isn't is where we're going to start today. So what I want you to do today is go ahead and get a piece of paper, and I want you to, on that piece of paper, draw a line down the middle of it again, kind of like we did last week. And I don't know, here, let me see if I can. Just like that. And at the top, you're gonna write what a myth is and what a myth isn't. We're gonna use that for our thinking in our lesson today to determine what a myth is and what a myth isn't, to help us going forward as we learn about more and more myths. So what I want you to look at right now is this picture here. This picture here is a picture of all of the Greek mythologists. I mean, all of the Greeks, the Greek gods and goddesses. There we go. All of the Greek gods and goddesses that mythology is going to talk about, that we've learned, that we're going to learn about. So first thing I want you to know, though, we need to talk about, do you think that a Greek, one of these stories that we even talked about last week, we even read some mythology stories last week with King Agnes, King Minos, Theseus, the Minotaurs. So do you think that a Greek mythology is a factual story, is a fictional story, or a nonfiction story? So I want you to think about that for a second. Do you think that it is nonfiction or fiction? Let's think back to fiction, or we were talking about nonfiction stories at school when we were learning about all of the people in Black history. So we know that nonfiction talks about real life things. So using that knowledge, what do you think Greek gods and goddesses, the Greek mythology stories are going to be? Are they going to be fiction or are they going to be nonfiction? Okay, so if you said nonfiction, you are absolutely correct. So on your paper where you made your list, we are going to write under the part that says, what is a myth? We're going to write a nonfiction story. Nonfiction story. I'm sorry, I said that wrong, didn't I? A Greek myth is not a true story, so that makes it fiction. There we go, Miss G. A Greek story makes it is not real. Like if you think about the Minotaur, if you think about the different characters that we've already talked about and the things and their actions that they've done, like jumping out of the tower and things like that, those are all fictional stories. So Greek mythology is fiction. So what is Greek mythology? It is a fictional story. So fictional, remember, if you don't know, just chunk out the sounds. Shun, that's a OG blend. So think about, not blend, that's an OG sound. So shun is shun, T-I-O-N, fiction. All fictional story. And you can write next to that like something to help remind you that it's not real, okay? So, first thing we know is that it is a fictional story. The next thing that we need to know about Greek mythology is it does have a purpose. So it tells something about something, okay? So what I want you to know about Greek myth is it explains things in nature. So where on that paper is it gonna go? Is it gonna go where what Greek mythology is or what it isn't. I just said that Greek mythology explains something in nature. Does that tell me what it is or what it isn't? Good. So on this side again, I'm going to put explains things in nature. And we're going to talk more about that as we learn about more and more different Greek myths and we read more Greek myth stories, okay? There's another thing that Greek mythology does for us. So I know that you have read books like David Goes to School or things like that, which always there's something to talk about in the story. There's a lesson that we can learn. Hands are not for hitting. Books like that. I know either you've read them or teachers have read them to you over the years. And those stories always help teach us a lesson. Well, guess what? Greek mythology also teaches a moral lesson. So are we going to put that on what side of it? Is it going to go what Greek mythology is or what it isn't? If it helps us if it teaches a moral lesson. Yes, it was going to go on the side that says, what is Greek mythology? So it teaches a lesson. Go ahead and write that with me. Remember, you can chunk that word, teach. Teach is, there's 2 syllables, teaches a lesson. And again, those are things we're going to continue to talk about as we go deeper and deeper into the unit. All right. Something else that we need to know. Are Greek gods different than human beings? What do you guys think so far? When you think about Zeus and Hercules, do you think Greek gods are different than human beings? They are. So that's something we're also going to talk about, is how Greek gods are different from human beings and the differences that we have between, humans and Greek gods. And again, remember, this is fictional, so it's not a real thing. So on your list on this side, what it isn't, I want you to be thinking about, what do you think a Greek myth isn't? So we said that what it is a fictional story, which means it's not real. I'm gonna write that too to help me remember. It explains things in nature, which is the outdoors, and it teaches a lesson. So now we know what a Greek myth is. Now we need to talk about what it isn't. So right away, we can stop and think, we already know that if it's not real, what is a Greek myth? Not. We know it's not real, right? So we are going to go ahead and write that on this side. Not a real life story, right? Thinking about like the books about Rosa Parks and Jackie Robinson. Those are real life stories. So it makes Greeks nonfiction, it makes it a fictional story. I'm sorry, it makes Greek mythology a fictional story, not a nonfiction story. So not a real life story, I'm gonna put non-fictional, not non-fictional, because it is fictional. Now, something else I want you to think about is, we said it explains things in nature and it teaches a lesson. So we know that that's what a Greek myth is. It explains things in nature and it teaches a lesson. So thinking about that, can we say, I don't know if y'all can even see my paper, I hope you can. Can we say, so we know that what it is, it's a fictional story, it's not real, it explains things in nature, and it teaches a lesson. We know that it is not a real life story. And we can also say that we know that it's not going to be like a how-to, right? It's not going to teach us how to do something like make a sandwich or cook things, right? It might teach us a lesson about being nice or how to I'm gonna wait on that. I'm gonna keep that for you. But we can say it's not a how-to guide on making things, right? Like it's not gonna tell us how to build a car. It's not gonna tell us how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. How to not a how-to guide on making things. Okay. So again, this is our list that we just made of what is a Greek myth and what a Greek myth is not. So you should also have that list and been writing it with me as I was writing it. So I'm going to give you a second to just finish up the writing. And tomorrow we will start in on a myth that we're going to talk about how it helps to explain something in nature and how the lesson that it teaches, either tomorrow or Wednesday. But first, what I want you to know is this picture here. Let's talk about this picture here. So this is Olympians on their thrones. It talks about how the gods are different from mortals on earth, but how do you know how to tell them apart from one another? What does it mean to be mortal? Mortal would be a new vocab word, so I'm going to write that over here on our vocab wall. What does it mean to be mortal? Mortal means a living thing that will eventually die. So, thinking about that, do you think that humans are mortal? If mortal means, again, listening to what the text says, mortal means a living thing that will eventually die, do you think that humans are mortal? Talk to your parent about that. Do you think that humans are mortal? And tell them why you think that using the evidence from the text. Again, listen again. The text says, mortal means a living thing that will eventually die. Go ahead and turn and talk to your parent real quick about that. Good. So if you said that humans eventually die, you are correct, right? Humans do eventually die. Even in the Greek stories, even though they're fictional, the humans do eventually die. So what do you think that means for the Greek gods? Do you think that they're mortal or do you think that they're immortal? What do you think? And do you know what immortal means? If mortal means things that eventually die, the opposite of that would be what? It means that they never die. Right? Would that make sense? It does, right? Because mortal means that you eventually die. So immortal would be the opposite. You don't die, which are where a variety of our Greek gods come into, which is why a lot of our Greek stories are fiction, because we both know that in real life, everything does come to an end, right? Good. Okay, so what I want you to do tonight, we're going to stop right there because that is a lot of information, and we're going to start and continue keeping like our character that we're learning about. So your homework today is to make sure you get a piece of paper or several pieces of paper, because we're going to make a Greek journal. And inside that journal, we are going to not just keep all of our information about our Greek gods, but we're also going to start talking about them in more depth in the journal, and that's where you will be doing a lot of your writing about them. So what I want you to do today is just make sure you're able to find a notebook or find, several pieces of paper to where you can be doing that with me for each of our lessons going forward. All right, you guys, I hope that this made sense. If not, we will go back again and talk about it again more in depth this week. And and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye.